This is Joe Masabni with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension at the Dallas Center. Thank you for joining me for the first of a series on the Dallas Vegetable Garden. Hopefully once a month you can join me and see the latest updates I have, things I've done, things I haven't done, things I wish I have done. Basically grow with me and the vegetable garden. So this is an aerial photo of the Dallas Center, I guess during construction. This is where the new building is. This is the water building. This is the greenhouse complex. If you ever visited me, this is the botany house that I've given you classes on my hydroponics. And here is the IPM building, and this red square inside it is where the vegetable garden it was there. So a close-up of that map shows you that the garden was fenced. It has a nice fence. It's 50 feet by 60 feet. It had a shed. It has a 3-bin wooden compost, 3-bin brick compost, a compost tumbler, blue barrel that you spin other bins and barrels. But it has been neglected for umpteenth years. Who knows how long, when was the last time they took care of it. This X is where I was standing, and I took a picture that you will see in the next slide. And look at this blue barrel here, tumbler, and you'll see picture of the ground halfway through the cleanup. So you see, you cannot see that barrel. There were weeds, there's vines growing on the fence. The gate, you cannot enter the gate. Look at the vents. I mean, weeds everywhere. Here you can see the other fence because I already went through the other side of the fence, end of the garden, because I cut some plants out, some weeds out. They were as tall as this wild sunflower here. This cluster here is asparagus that I moved, that I'm going to move somewhere else. But did a lot of cleaning. You see all these straws here are stems of the 3 or 4 foot tall weeds that I hedged to cut down and clean. This tree was cut down, so that's gone. See, but the fence is nice, has a nice structure. There's a gate here and a gate there, but they're small gates. I wanted a bigger gate to bring in mulch and compost, so we put it. And amazing the things you can find buried under 3 feet of weeds. Old drip irrigation, old hoses, old buckets, someone just left it and walked away, left everything behind. I even found gardening tools in there. And this is another view of that cluster. This is halfway, so this is, you see here where I haven't finished weeding, see how tall the weeds were. That's how everything it was. All of that was like that. And that's basically at the end of the cleaning, after we cut and weeded to shred with a mower, shred all the parts. Now you can see the blue barrel composter. You can see these bins here. All left inside the fenced garden is that cluster of asparagus plants. And here's another review from that end. So like I said, there's a small gate on this side and small gate on this side, but I want a bigger one. So we put a gated fence, 12-foot gate here, but unfortunately it wasn't put right in the middle of that 50-foot length. So you'll see how that affected my garden design. So 50 by 60, and I was hoping to get 16 raised beds that are 20 foot long each, but because this new gate here on the east side was not in the middle of the fence, one side ended up being 22 feet and the other side, the beds ended up being 17 feet. So my plan was to have everything you see in yellow will be mulch. And everything you see in all the other colors, these 16 are the raised beds, 4 foot wide. So this one will be 4 by 22, and this will be 4 by 17. The alleyways are 2.5 feet, and then the path are 7 feet for, I guess, for a tractor or for a small tractor in the future if there's ever rise a need. And all around it is mulch, again 2 feet or 3 feet. So basically an instant garden. This way I don't have to deal for the next 20 years with weeds and all those perennial weeds that have established themselves so well in that vegetable garden. Instant vegetable garden, 1 foot of compost in the raised bed and 1 foot of mulch in the alleyways and everywhere else. So this is the garden after it got cleaned up and the bundle of asparagus removed. I think there were like 12 plants in there. I removed them. I'll plant them on the side where the shed, next to the shed, and I'll show you pictures in the future. That'll be another video. And I started staking. You see the stake, start staking where the beds and where the alleyways should be. And we used a bobcat to bring in the mulch and compost. So this is when half the garden was laid, filled with mulch and compost. And this is a panoramic view from one side to another, showing you where the new gate is and where at the stage when half the garden was already done. And this picture when the whole garden was done, except for this path and this path, they still need mulch. I thought I'll keep them because I want to come back and refill and touch up and level them and add a little bit more compost using a wheelbarrow to clean it up. And then we'll use the bobcat to finish this the alleyway path. But you see, instant garden, no need for weeding or rototilling or this, because these weeds here that were established and these are perennials, and I'm gonna try to avoid using any residual herbicides or strong herbicides. So I decided just bury them under 1 foot of compost and mulch, and we'll see. Hopefully in the future, future episodes, you may see that whether this worked or whether I'll show you that, hey, you see these weeds are poking through this 1 foot of mulch and compost. Okay, and this is me through, and this is me and Antonio, with the expert at the bobcat, driving this way here, bringing in the compost. It was easy to work with. Between deliveries, I was able to level, or not 100% level and make it smooth, but at least level it before he arrived with the second load. December 14, I planted 4 rows on the northwest corner, and with different kinds of bok choy and a couple of varieties of loose leaf Chinese cabbage, and half a row of Swiss chard. They were doing great. They're established, beautiful, in the middle of the 4 foot wide bed. The plan was to maybe put small tunnels, hoops that I made, and cover them with plastic. Unfortunately, I did not find them in my move between Overton and Dallas, so they ended up not being covered. I went with my past experience that, okay, it's slowly going to get colder. These are Asian vegetables, cold tolerant. They should be okay unless, if under normal conditions. Well, we did not have normal conditions, and you'll see in the next slide. This video is about watering. Let's watch. I'm all about drip irrigation. I tell everybody and his cousin about the benefit of drip irrigation in a vegetable garden. I use it. I teach how to install it. I install it everywhere. But being a new garden that I just planted here 3 days ago, I'm going back to old school. And I tell you what, there's nothing more fun than watering by hand. Go drip irrigation. Until then, have fun watering by hand. And this is the fertilizer injector that I used using the Venturi siphon that you see here. It's an attachment. You want to fertilize, you drop the hose here. You don't want to fertilize, you take the hose out. So let's watch this video that has more detail about fertilization. And this is the northwest corner of the vegetable garden. So I'm fertilizing today using the Venturi siphon. I'll show you a close-up of it. That's the easiest way to fertilize a small garden. This brand is made by Dram, D-R-A-M-M, and it dilutes it 20 times. So what you see in the black bucket there is 20 times more concentrated. I made 100 parts per million solution using 1616. And there's a formula that you can tell you how much you need to add, ounces per gallon. And then of course you multiply it by 20 because that siphon dilutes it by 20, and that's how I had. Based on my numbers, for 5 gallons, I needed 8 ounces of that 1616, which will get me 100 parts per million after dilution, because what's in that bucket is 100 parts per million times 20. Of course, it has its limitation. It only works like maximum 50 feet of length and minimum 35 psi for it to work properly. But for right now, for my need, something quick that will get me through this crop, first planting, it works fine. Okay, so again, this is just quick and dirty setup. I will have injector, I will have permanent drip irrigation lines. That is where you will join me in future classes and see how it's done, and we'll show you step by step, and this way you can learn from me how to do it and see how it's done. Okay, so I said these Asian vegetables will do fine under normal winter conditions, but around the new year we had the new year freeze, and the lowest temperature we got was 19, but with a wind chill of 4, and then it stayed freezing the next day and never reached and then dropped to 23 the next night. So it was really bad, and those plants that were not covered, you come back the next day and that's how they looked. Now I've seen frozen plants, but when you take a close look and you see something like this, and my experience tells me that when you see something like this, that's like water from inside the leaves froze and busted and cracked, went through the cell and froze on the surface. This is serious freeze damage, not just water droplet frozen on and on the leaves. This is serious freeze damage. These plants don't look good at all. That was the pak choy. Here's the Swiss chard. Here is the loose leaf Chinese cabbage. All of them showing those symptoms of extreme freeze injury with all these ice crystals. You see like the dots everywhere. To me, that's water from inside the tissue that froze and cracked the cells and crystallized on the surface of the plant. Looking real bad. Okay, and this video was taken this morning, like for about 4 or 5 days after that. Today is the well, a week after the freeze, and let's watch. Okay, welcome back to the vegetable garden here at the Dallas Center. These were planted 3 weeks ago, 80-degree weather, and then in the last 4 or 5 days we've been getting 23. One night was 20 with a wind chill of 4, and then 30 and 20 and 30. And all these are Asian vegetables. I've told you what they are, all kind of bok choys and Chinese cabbage and Swiss chard and more bok choy. And looks like everything is froze. Of course the leaf is froze. You'll just have to look at the crown, the growing point, and even that looks like it's dead. These are dead. So I've done similar work at Overton, 2 hours east from here, planted the same time and never had this issue. So looks like Dallas is colder, and that's a lesson learned. We gotta use winter protection. So okay, final thoughts. Well, first I need to learn how to move the camera slowly. I was getting headache just watching the video that we watched together. I need to move the camera around very more slowly. What did I learn from this so far is that if I were to give this a rating on the garden from 1 to 10, I would give it a 2 after the freeze. Before the freeze, I will give it a 4. Because the beds are not perfect, they're not smooth, they're not complete. I mean, 4, I'm being out of 10, I'm being generous because it's enthusiasm, it's clean, and it is there. But lack of forethought, lack of planning. I knew the forecast called for severe weather. I was optimistic that they will be fine. They will not be fine if they tell you it's going to drop below in the 20s. Do something, throw a blanket, throw some tunnel, throw 2 blankets, throw some straw, whatever it takes. I mean, I had compost sitting there. In half hour of work, I would have covered those 4 beds with 6 inches of straw, of mulch, and that would have protected them. And then another half hour, 45 minutes afterwards to clean them up, to clean the straw and dig up the plants from under that straw, and they would have survived. So for an hour of work, I would have saved myself the 2 hours of planting, and now I lost everything. So I give myself 2 out of 10 rating on this garden so far. Stay with me. Hopefully with time you will see drip irrigation, you'll see automatic fertilization, you'll see different crops, you'll see beautiful, and maybe one day we'll reach 10 out of 10. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you next month.